and a very warm welcome to Media Monitor on the SABC News Channel, independent and impartial. Now, this is where we take a look inside the world of media, analysing the trends, the issues and the reporting of some of the week's top stories. I'm Peter Ndoro, and this is what's coming up on the show today. We'll be taking a look at how media consumption is seeing a rise during the COVID-19 lockdown. Our international editor feature this week, well, that takes us to West Africa, Ghana, and we'll get an update from the capital, Accra. In our News in History feature, we'll take you back to the 10th of April 1993. And if you can remember, it was a very important year in the transition of the country, but there was a fateful incident that happened on that day, and we'll update you on that during the program. So don't forget, you can also engage with us on social media, and you can use the Twitter handle hashtag SABC Media Monitor, hashtag SABC Media Monitor. But before we get into our highlighted stories on the program, let's first take a look at what's on the front pages of the Sunday newspapers this morning. All right, we start with the Sunday Times, with the lead story there is about the economy disrupted by COVID-19 coronavirus. The lockdown extension has been weighing on the country's economy, threatening to push unemployment to 50% as businesses and workers clamour for relief, and the president demands rescue plans from his ministers. The City Press, let's take a look at that. Well, that's also on the coronavirus on its front page, with 10,000 health workers all geared up to conduct mass screenings in hotspots countrywide. After weeks of delays caused by equipment shortages and logistical glitches, testing is to be ramped up this week, with government saying over the next 2 weeks it would shift from passive case finding to active case detection. The Sunday Independent, well, that's running a story about soldiers being accused of killing a man in Alexandra Township, north of Johannesburg. The paper says that a 40-year-old man was allegedly assaulted and killed by members of the SANDF during a crackdown on Friday. And it's believed that this brings to 9 now the number of people killed by police and soldiers for allegedly violating the national lockdown. The Sunday Tribune is reporting a story about a court dismissing claims that the Department of Health had endangered the lives of healthcare workers by not providing adequate personal protective equipment in the fight against the COVID-19 coronavirus. Well, the National Education, Health and Allied Workers Union, NAHAO, had made an urgent application to the Labour Courts alleging a dire shortage of protective equipment at health facilities. The Sunday World, well, that's talking about police stations in lockdown, and we can tell you that Douglasdale and Tembisa seem to be the ones that have been identified, and police officers there are actually refusing to work, saying that they want to be tested before they go out there. All right, so that's a look at your newspapers. Let's catch you up now with what's trending on social media, because most of you, a lot of you actually, that's where you get your news. So let's take a look at what's happening on Twitter. These are the top 5 trends a short while ago, and these change, of course, every so often. And Easter Sunday, notably, of course, it's a holy day for Christians around the world. But I'm always interested in the lockdown ones. Day 17 of lockdown. Let's take a look at some of the messages that you've been putting through. And of course, the first one, it's the birthday of President Jacob Zuma. Yeah, he's 78 today. So some people wishing him happy birthday. Another one trending is Zuma Day. And there you go, day 17 of lockdown. Happy birthday, Ubaba. Celebrating his 78th birthday. And then there's just some nice messages. Good morning from my son. And the next one, yesterday it was Sunday, today is another Sunday, even tomorrow is Sunday. People saying, and I've lost track of days, I must tell you. National Cooperative Governance Traditional Affairs saying it's a scientifically proven fact that being grateful and thankful, showing appreciation can improve one's mental health and physical health. So what are you thankful for on this 17th day of the lockdown? And yeah, another day celebrating Easter Sunday. How can we forget that in the midst of all of this, this is a most holy day in the Christian calendar, because this was the day that Christ rose from the dead, if that's your belief in your religion. And then this one, couldn't resist. Still 17 days only. Oh, okay. And that's all of your messages on social media, Twitter in particular. And yeah, happy birthday to former President Jacob Zuma, turning 78 today. All right, lots to come. Stay with us.
Be seen by 1 million Yellow Pages online customers. Get started with the Yellow My Start and get a listing on the Yellow Pages app, a Facebook business page, and a website of up to 15 pages for only $5.99 per month. Attract customers online with Telkom Business and Yellow Pages Digital. Click yellowpages.co.za for more info.
The fourth industrial revolution is here and we should not waste time.
Governments are putting countries on lockdown to curb the spread of COVID-19. Local tech innovators are also doing their bit to help. Like this tap that you don't have to touch to turn on.
Our system, as soon as the foot force is off, it shuts closed totally.
Tech plays an important role again in how we keep ourselves informed.
We are getting on social media maybe for 5 hours.
And there's tech again for us to entertain ourselves as we are locked up in the house.
Instagram, Facebook. During this period, people will be focusing on workouts.
That's Network with me, Spumelele Zondi, every Sunday at 8:30 p.m.
Dumelang, hello, and sanibonani mzansi to another edition of Dis-Chem's Daily Care, your guide to everything you need to know around COVID-19. Congratulations to you for making it to week 2 of lockdown in South Africa. So what that has meant is that many of us, whether we are with our immediate family, our extended family, or our chosen family, it means we are with each other all the time and sometimes on top of each other. In fact, it doesn't matter what kind of space you're in, it can be a lot. Today I am talking to mother of 2, Nomsa Matita, about how she is coping with her 2 children being on lockdown. Fact or fiction, is it easier being at home with the kids on lockdown?
So, with the current lockdown, I have mastered the art of keeping the kids busy. And as you can see now, I don't even have their attention.
The lockdown and social distancing is happening to children as much as it's happening to us adults, which leads me to my next question. What do you, Nomsa, like doing with your kids during this time?
So during this lockdown, I have decided to stay very positive, and that has given me enough time to spend with the kids. Now, favorite thing to do is makeup puzzles. So the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, right?
Like Nomsa, you can enjoy yourself during this time. It does not mean you are in prison. And once again, South Africa, thank you for flattening the curve. Remember, we are in this together. We can do this. Well, that's it for me and the people at Dis-Chem's Daily Care. We'll catch you next time. Remember, stay home, stay safe, and take care.
Right, welcome back. You're still watching Media Monitor. Let's catch you up with some stories across the continent. And we begin on the Horn of Africa, where Somali authorities have this past week been accused of claiming a monopoly on information about the COVID-19 coronavirus crisis, which by disabling reporters for being able to fulfill the vital role of informing the public in a free and independent manner. Now, according to Reporters Without Borders and the National Union of Somali Journalists, access to state-held information about the COVID-19 crisis is becoming more and more difficult as it's being closely controlled in the capital, Mogadishu. Now, the country's Ministry of Health and Human Resources set the tone for this hardline on the 3rd of March when it summoned journalists to explain what to do and not to do during the COVID-19 crisis. Last week, the Committee to Protect Journalists released an open letter to world leaders urging the immediate release of all journalists imprisoned for doing their work. The letter was signed by 81 media, press freedom and human rights organizations. The CPJ said in the letter that a staggering number of journalists are being held in jails across Africa for just doing their jobs. And now, in the midst of the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic, there are real fears for their lives. In an email sent to heads of state in Africa, the CPJ said, we urge you to release every jailed journalist in your respective countries and to protect the free press and the free flow of information at this crucial time. Journalism must not carry a death sentence. All right, it's time now for us to go into our News Archives feature. And today we take you back to a fateful day that many South Africans still remember like it was yesterday. The 10th of April 1993 saw the assassination of the South African Communist Party leader Chris Hani. This at the hands of a Polish immigrant, Janusz Walusz, and he was helped by Clive Derby-Lewis, a senior South African Conservative Party MP and Shadow Minister for Economic Affairs at the time. Hani was also at the time ANC-NEC member and also the Chief of Staff of Mkhonto weSizwe. This is how the SABC told the story.
Good evening. The assassination of South African Communist Party Secretary General Chris Hani has sent shockwaves around the country. 50-year-old Mr. Hani was gunned down outside his home in Boksburg this morning.
A 40-year-old Polish-born South African who was arrested shortly afterwards is being held for questioning. Deputy Law and Order Minister Gert Myburgh says preliminary investigations indicate Mr. Hani's death could be the result of an individual acting on his own. He also urged political leaders to exercise maximum restraint and said Mr. Hani's assassination shouldn't be used as an excuse for revenge attacks. Jessica Pitchford and cameramen James Mosaka, Dave Cronje, Koen Manevik and Dudley Saunders compiled this report. Distraught family members, friends and colleagues gathered outside Chris Hani's Boksburg home. He was gunned down at about 10:20 this morning in the driveway of his home. He had just returned from buying the newspaper, for once, minus his bodyguards. As he got out of his car, a man in a red Ford Laser allegedly pulled up behind him, got out and fired several shots.
I had about 5 shots. I think there were 5 shots.
Yeah.
And I had Chris's daughter Kwezi crying. I rushed out of the house. And then I saw her. She came to me running. And I went over the house and I saw Chris. He was lying there, clutching a newspaper. And I think he was dead.
Another neighbor and close friend, Tokyo Sehwale, arrived shortly afterwards.
As I entered, I found his daughter screaming. And in the driveway next to his car, his body lay. The shot behind his ear, a direct shot. Another shot on his jaw, showing that it was a marksman. There could be other shots. I was devastated and could not search the body of Chris Hani for more shots.
Acting on information from an eyewitness, police arrested a 40-year-old Pretoria man in Boksburg shortly after the shooting. He is apparently of Polish descent and holds a South African passport. 2 pistols were found in his car.
One a Z88 and one also a Luger pistol, I believe. These pistols will be removed to Pretoria to our forensics department, where proper checks will be conducted. This man is now in detention, and obviously the police is investigating this tragic incident.
While the media hovered like vultures to tell the story to the world, senior ANC members arrived to pay their respects. Vice President Walter Sisulu appealed for calm.
It's no small crisis that we are facing. All crises have faced us in the past. We will stand even this crisis. We will be the victors in the end. But only if our people behave as usual, in a disciplined manner, in a responsible manner, as people who are hurt.
The emotion and the anger that all of us are feeling should not be able to be used for more loss of life.
ANC PWV Chairman Tokyo Sehwale said Chris Hani should be remembered as a man who died for his people.
I think people should remember Chris for what he said 2 days ago on television. He was at pains to describe stability, peace, cooperation. Chris died for peace.
I think you'll...
How shall we convince people? About you?
And in a special news conference called by the ANC SACP Cosatu Alliance this evening, SACP Chairman Joe Slovo called for churches throughout the country to pray for peace tomorrow. He suggested that Wednesday, April the 14th, be observed as a memorial day for Chris Hani. Mr. Slovo asked for international police participation in the investigation in Mr. Hani's murder and said police were premature in suggesting that only one person was involved in the assassination.
As far as the investigation is concerned, we have been in close touch with the police, and we have indicated that we demand the fullest participation of the Alliance in the investigation.
All right, so that was 1993, and a very sad time indeed in the country's history. All right, so let's get back to 2020, and there's no doubt that COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdowns associated with it have caused untold damage to business and the economy, not just here but across the world. With the people stuck at home, what are they doing with their time? Well, predictably, social media usage has gone up, but has other media, such as news, also seen a rise? Well, one person who's been looking at this is John Walls, who's the director at Ultimate Media, a radio convergence specialist agency in South Africa. He joins us now via Skype to tell us what he found. John, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Peter.
All right, so it's fascinating. We're stuck at home. I know for sure social media is up because I see the tweets and the things trending like mad. You've looked into how this lockdown has affected the media, and in broad terms, what have you found?
So we've done some research overseas, but mostly we've collaborated with radio stations in South Africa. And really what we're trying to do is just get a dipstick of what they're picking up, mostly through digital measurements, because you have to understand that radio's measurement system is still quite antiquated. It's done with those old-fashioned diaries, and it only gets released every 3 months. So the last release was late Feb. The next release is only going to be late May. So it's impossible to be definitively sure that radio is up. So what radio stations do around the world is they measure, is there an increase in live streaming? Is there an increase in streaming on their apps? Is there an increase in call-ins to the shows? WhatsApp engagement. So it's not all 100% scientific. Some of it is anecdotal. But what has been absolutely clear is that despite some early predictions by media analysts who said, oh, we think radio will suffer because radio is an in-car medium, in fact, the very opposite has happened. And I mean, right across the world, from Germany up 18%, India yesterday, the Association of Broadcasters there released a survey. Their listening is up 23% during the lockdown period. And in South Africa, there's some amazing figures. Some of the talk stations, their live streaming is up over 44%. An anecdotal figure, 702, that the number of calls into their morning show went up from an average of 250 in a morning up to 650.
Wow.
So it's a trend, and it's being reported by nearly all stations.
All right, so does that mean that people are wanting news maybe about the coronavirus and just finding out more about what's going on outside their houses?
So I think news is a big part of it. And as I said, you'll see from some of the news stations that their figures are up. Radio has always been a very trusted source of news information. But, you know, it's also companionship and it's entertainment. And we've always said radio is your best friend. But, you know, my gosh, there's never been a time where you need a friend more than right now. So I think people are finding a huge amount of comfort and familiarity by being able to tune in and listen to their favorite DJs every day. And also to find out what's going on. You know, I think radio has always been used strongly as a local medium. So I think all of us, we're all captivated by coronavirus. And I think most of us will be, you know, perhaps watching a CNN or a BBC for the international news. We'll be consuming something like your station, Peter, or ENCA for the national news. But when it comes to local and regional, and it's really important to know what's happening outside in the streets when we can't get out there. I think radio and local radio in particular is critical.
All right. You mentioned 702. Have you any idea, because one of our stations that we're most proud of because of the size of listenership is Ukhozi FM. And I wonder if you had any indications about what's happened to them.
So we are working closely with the SABC. And in fact, the National Association of Broadcasters, the NAB, are working on quite a lot of work where they're pooling resources and statistics from all the major station groups. And SABC, I have to be honest, is the one that I'm most interested in, and the African language stations in particular, because they are monsters, as you say. So Ukhozi has got over 7 million listeners, and Club Wenene has something like 4.5 million listeners. These are massive, massive stations. So if we can show that radio listening trends are up there, it's going to be really important. So we've struggled a bit to get those numbers so far. So what we did was we took the initiative of talking to presenters on those stations. We as a company work very closely with them. And we spoke to a number. We spoke to Dudu Koza in particular from Ukhozi. And she had some really interesting stats. So we said, so what is happening? She said, firstly, people want to stay in touch long after the show has ended. So they do that through WhatsApp, they do it through social media. What she's also said is that listeners are fascinated with what she is doing at home. So she's obviously at home most of the day, and she will post on Instagram, she will post on Facebook what she's up to, and she gets immediate response, and her response is up significantly. The presenters are reporting significant increase in call-ins. And we asked them, what are people wanting to talk about? And she said they want to know about stuff to do with kids. They want to know about binging on Netflix. They want to know about chores and how do you get kids to do those chores. They want to know about gaming. So it's all the kind of things you would expect. But across the board, the few presenters we spoke to, 3 or 4 on African language stations, just say that activity in general is through the roof.
All right,
but we would like to see some more positive or some more specific statistics coming up.
All right, so you mentioned streaming, and I'm wondering that in the digital age that we are living in, it looks as if we're probably listening to these radio stations on our mobiles and on our computers more than the old-fashioned transistor radio.
Yeah, that is actually one of the most fascinating things to come out of it, is that obviously, we cannot measure whether people are listening to old-fashioned radio sets at the moment. So all we can do is on digital devices. But it does seem from the sheer numbers that we're seeing is that people are rediscovering radio through their phones, through their Alexa speakers, through whatever it might be. And I think what they may have done, what's happening is that, you know, there was an expectation that music streaming, things like Spotify, would go through the roof. They haven't. If you look at figures from Italy, from the UK, from the USA, during coronavirus, music streaming has actually dropped significantly, up to 20%. So why is that? They think it is because, you know, people aren't going to gym, they're not driving in the car to work, they don't have those those moments when Spotify would be perfect. So we do think they're tuning to radio, and I think it's a very simple thing. If I'm used to going onto Spotify on my phone, it really is not difficult for me now to tune into my favorite radio station. So I think it's really exciting for radio stations, because does it mean that they've got a chance to recapture a digital savvy younger audience going forward? I mean, when coronavirus is done with.
So the difficult thing about this kind of scenario is it's a radio station manager's dream to get his listener numbers up, but he only does that at the back of the mind because he has to get the advertisers to come and support the radio station. But now the challenge, of course, is, do advertisers advertise if they can't produce goods, if the listeners can't actually go and buy them, so that you've got this boost in listenership but not necessarily in revenue?
Yeah, I know. It is a conundrum, isn't it? So the World Federation of Advertisers released a survey they did in the last week or two, and they surveyed big brands around the world. And you're right, 81% of those brands said we are putting campaigns on hold. Because you're right, there's no point going out and advertising product if people can't get out to buy those products. But so what these same advertisers said is roughly the same number said, however, we are pivoting our messaging, and we're now going to give relevant messaging, obviously relevant to what people need at the moment while they are in lockdown. So a lot of that hasn't happened yet. So there's been a bit of a time lag. And I know we at Ultimate Media saw almost a state of paralysis from advertisers, I think, for the first couple of weeks. And not surprisingly, because people were trying to get their work from home stories sorted out. But in the past week, we've seen quite an uptick of advertisers coming back and saying, right, we're ready to go with something. It's not campaign specific. We've ditched that one. Now we want something that is either talking about solidarity with listeners or giving them tips on, how to manage finance or how to eat nutritiously or whatever it might be. But it is pivoting the message to a time, to right now, to being relevant to coronavirus and lockdown. So I think there will be a bit of a bounce back. I don't think it's going to get to where it normally would, because we're also in a recessionary time as well. So, a lot of advertisers, despite all the evidence over history showing that those people who advertise, who in fact increase advertising spend during a recession, will actually double market share or increase market share significantly in the years to follow. But despite all of that, I think most advertisers are going to be cautious. And I think the brave ones will come back over the next few weeks. But as I say, they will pivot their message to coronavirus.
All right, and perhaps finally, I guess for the station managers, it's about an opportunity, to, increase brand awareness and perhaps even get listeners that weren't listening to them before, that even after COVID, that they'll stay with them. So not a total waste.
Absolutely, and that is the challenge. But I mean, it's the biggest gift for the radio stations, because if these numbers are accurate and new listeners are being attracted, it's a challenge for the program managers. They've really got to put their thinking caps on and say, right, when things are back to normal, how do I compete with social media, with just digital in general, with music streaming, with podcasting? So that is the big challenge, and I think time will tell. But yes, it's a silver lining for the radio industry during this whole crisis.
John Walls, thanks so much indeed for your insights, and happy Easter and stay safe.
And to you, Peter, happy Easter. Thank you very much.
Thanks, my brother. All right, so that's John Walls from Ultimate Media talking to us about people are listening to radio much, much more. The numbers, double-digit increases, and so that bodes well, perhaps not so much in terms of revenue, but I think some of those listeners finding new stations, re-loving radio may stay after COVID-19 has gone. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have more for you right here. So don't go away.
Dumilang and hello Mzansi, welcome to Diskem's Daily Care, your guide to everything you need to know around COVID-19, also known as the coronavirus. So recent research has shown that unfortunately children and infants can be infected by the coronavirus. The good news, however, is that it's not as aggressive on children and infants as it is on, say, the elderly, particularly the elderly with medical conditions. Today I have Dr. Mbata, who is an anatomical pathologist. So doctor, the question I have for you is, if you are a guardian of an infant or young children, what can you do to better protect not only yourself, but children?
No one is immune from the infection. However, for no really known reason, children are not getting a severe form of the disease. But we must still wash our hands, especially when we come from places like work, from grocery shopping. We still need to make sure that when we get home, we sanitize, we wash our hands, and we constantly wash the children's hands because, babies still crawl and they'll pick up some viruses on the surface.
So we're now the ones who are infecting our kids when it used to be the other way around.
We actually have to protect children from us now because we carry the virus from work, from shopping to home.
Thank you, doctor, for that useful information. For parents and guardians out there, remember you can make washing hands very fun for the kids. Well, that's it from us at Daily Care. We'll catch you next time. However, if you do have any questions, remember we are on social media. Post, let us know. Even send us your pictures. Show us how you are doing during this lockdown time. From me and the pharmacists who care, stay home, stay safe, and take care.
We're not allowed to be here from this moment on. So I guess the media is going to try and move across the line at this stage.
The fact that they have to self-isolate is really tough.
There needs to be a coordinated approach to deal with this virus.
The government say it's now time to minimize social contact.
MT capital city of Nairobi
is under a lockdown.
Welcome back. You're watching Media Monitor. Now, this past week, the NGO Reporters Without Borders called on the Ghanaian authorities to guarantee the safety of media personnel whilst covering the COVID-19 crisis. This after a radio journalist was attacked by a soldier and then placed in police custody whilst reporting in Kumasi, a city 259 kilometers northwest of Accra in southern Ghana, on the 5th of April. Now, Yusuf Abdul Ganyu, a correspondent of the German public broadcaster Deutsche Welle's Africa service and manager of Kumasi-based Zaria FM, was clubbed by a female army officer whilst he was out covering the effectiveness of the lockdown in a Kumasi suburb, as I said, in southern Ghana. Abdul Ganyu was then placed in police custody and his equipment confiscated. Accused of broadcasting false information about an alleged case of military brutality on Zaria FM, he was soon released without charge after a local official, a locally elected official, intervened in the matter. Okay, well, let's stay in this West African country of Ghana as we bring you our regular international editor feature. And today we're joined via Skype by Albert Kofi Obusu, who is General Manager at the Ghana News Agency. Thanks so much indeed. Akwaba.
Yeah, Peter.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, means thank you.
Oh, medasi. All right, so how are things in Ghana at the moment? Are you in a state of lockdown? What is the situation?
Well, as you know already, the whole of the country is gripped with this pandemonium in terms of not knowing what this pandemic is going to turn out for many Ghanaians. So the lockdown has been announced in major cities of the country, and we are observing that countrywide. the whole country is supposed to also observe the strict hygienic protocols that have been announced by the president and the health authorities. So I must say that the whole country is on tenterhooks, if you like, observing the proceedings, as it were.
All right, and what are the statistics telling you?
It's not what, on the brighter side, that we're hoping for, especially having been under lockdown for the past 2 weeks, and we're about to start a third week under lockdown starting tomorrow morning, early morning. We are told that we have about 408 cases as we speak, and we've recorded 8 deaths in terms of the casualties. And if you consider the fact that just a few weeks ago, Ghana was recording single digits in numbers in terms of the confirmed, cases, and suddenly we are over 400. That's some concern for the health authorities and Ghanaians as a whole.
All right, and this, I guess, is this spike that's been experienced by most countries, that there's this initial stage and then it suddenly starts shooting up. How has the media been telling the story from your viewpoint?
Well, the media, by the way, it's one segment of the population that is considered an exempt, essential service. So the media houses and the practitioners are out there operating. But of course, we are also observing the protocols, keeping skeleton staff at post, and many of the reporters operating from their homes where they are under lockdown, or they can go cover certain areas close to their where they live, and then report on matters via using all the communication tools available to us: smartphone, laptops, internet, and all that. And we have just a few editors at the stations or the media houses, at the offices, who just work on these stories and send them out. And as you know, because we are under lockdown in the major cities considerably, people are counting on the media for the stories that they will get to know what is happening, what the government is doing, what authorities are also doing in terms of contact tracing and churning out the numbers of confirmed cases and all that. So in the midst of this lockdown and this anxiety, the media's role has come up for mention that the government depends on the media to inform the populace about what is going on, the various mitigating measures taken by the government to address the concerns coming up, even after the lockdown in some areas. And so we are in the thick of affairs. Yeah. And constantly we have the Ministry of Information also organizing press conferences and updating the citizenry on the measures government is adopting to try and curb this pandemic.
All right, so you say the authorities need the media to spread the gospel, as it were, but we hear these stories like the one I just read out before I joined you about this journalist, Yusuf Abdul Ganiu, a correspondent from Deutsche Welle. Reporters Without Borders said that Ghanaian authorities should ensure the safety of journalists. Has this been a widespread problem, or is this a few isolated incidents?
I would say, to the extent that it's in connection with a media practitioner, as I heard you talk about before the break, that will be an isolated incident, because to my knowledge, we have not had any such assault cases involving journalists and the security personnel, because in the president's address and subsequent announcements that have come from government sector, the media are part of the exempt cases in terms of people who are allowed, who have the freedom to go out and report on it. And it makes sense, doesn't it, that in this time of lockdowns and all that, the government depends very much on the media to transmit information to the populace. So I don't know what happened in the case of the Zero correspondent, but the media practitioners have also been told to be clearly identified wearing your tags, and some have their vests on, so that when you are accosted by any police officer or security personnel, you can identify yourself to them and be allowed to do your work.
All right, let's talk a little bit about what's in the papers today and in the last couple of days. What's really been on the front pages?
Well, as you can imagine, in this quarter, this first quarter that just went by, all the stories have been about the coronavirus and what government is doing to check the spread, the contact tracing, people observing the protocol, the social distances and all that distancing that we are talking about. So the papers and the online portals and the airwaves are filled with stories of such nature. In some parts of the country, especially those under lockdowns, you have especially the informal sector and then predominantly the market centers where people are failing to observe the social distancing, and so the authorities have had to stamp their foot down and actually close down some market centers. So you get the sense this is what really we're reporting on. Aside of that, as I said earlier, the Ministry of Information and assisted by other relevant authorities like the Ghana Health Service and other professional groups have been updating citizens through these press conferences. So even the press conference, not all media representatives are allowed to attend, just TV stations who can transmit the pictures for others to also pick on and publish, to their audiences. So essentially, it's always updating the Ghanaians, the citizenry, about the mitigating measures government is putting in place, such as, for example, government deciding to take up the utility bills of households and the poor, and announcing some insurance packages for the frontline health professionals and all that. So, and today in particular, being a Sunday, it is the Easter Sunday. And Ghana has the largest population of Christians forming in a religious country as Ghana. So people were expecting that today would have been a joyous occasion where people will flock to the churches in their new clothes to dance and give thanks to God and all that. And even the preceding days would have also witnessed lots of activities and all that. But all of these things have not happened. As you know, church services are being held via the internet and then traditional media, TV and radio. So they're copying it. If you look at the paper, the front page, they're saying this is a most unprecedented Easter celebration. And some say that Easter is on ice. So it's a new thing that Ghanaians are going through at this point in our life.
So as I ask you this next question, I'm going to ask you to fix your camera again because it's dropped. All we can see is a little bit of your head now. There you go. Fantastic.
Okay.
So what happens at times like this, at times of crisis, the heads of state and the leadership really need to stand up, and some have been standing up better than others. We're very proud of the way that our president has stood up in South Africa. Some people in America might be wondering, if the president there's done the same. What about in Ghana? How's your president been? Has he been the man at the front inspiring a nation?
Yeah, very much so. I can count about 6 national televised addresses the President Nana Akufo-Addo has made in the last few weeks since the infection was recorded in the country. And at each of these televised addresses, the President is able to give us an update of the confirmed cases and also to announce whatever measures or whatever packages that the government has planned for the people. The last 2 addresses that the president made to the nation, for example, he mentioned the fact that the government is going to take care of the utility bills of consumers for the next 3 months. And that was water in the first place. And the last address, he mentioned electricity bills as well for the lifeline consumers, that's the poor. All of their bills will be taken care of by way of electricity. And for other household and private sector operators, to 50% of their bills will be taken care of by the government. So people look forward to the president's address because he is constantly briefed by the health authorities and other stakeholders to be able to come for this what has become the late night broadcast, because the broadcasts tend to be in the evening, late in the night, and people wait up to listen to the president. And to think that even the political parties, the opposition political parties, have all rallied behind the government to say that, look, this pandemic has no coloration. It doesn't differentiate between a party in government, a party in the opposition. So they are rallying behind the president to ensure that this pandemic is curbed.
All right. My dear brother, thank you so much indeed for joining us on the program today and sharing your insights with us of what's happening in your country. Medasi, and we'll catch up with you again soon.
You're welcome. Take care.
Thank you. All right. So that was Albert Kofi Owusu, who's the General Manager of the Ghana News Agency, telling us about the situation in this country. And much like the rest of the continent, many of the stories are about COVID-19. Stay with us. When we come back after the break, we're going to meet the new editor of the Sowetan.
Did you know that Victoria Falls is a waterfall in southern Africa on the Zambezi River? At the border between Zambia and Zimbabwe, Scottish missionary and explorer David Livingstone is believed to have been the first European to view Victoria Falls on 16th November 1855 from what is known as Livingstone Island. Livingstone named the discovery in honor of Queen Victoria of Britain. The Victoria Falls are also called Musi Watunya, or the smoke that thunders.
All South Africans will have to stay at home.
As the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro or municipality, we have about 5 venues to cater for the homeless.
Officials say approximately half of the 4,000 homeless people in the Cape Town CBD are already being accommodated in shelters.
You find about 8 people who are sleeping in there. The chances of them infecting everyone in there, they are very high.
I think we underestimated the numbers. At least now, the situation is firmly under control.
We're trying to keep our hands on the pulse for the homeless in the city as part of our President's call.
There will be a day when COVID-19 is a thing of the past.
Until then, our president has announced a national lockdown to save lives.
Unless you're an essential worker, stay at home. This is to protect you and others.
Stay at home, dulang haye, hlalanek haya, play still.
Only leave home to seek medical care, go to the bank,
or to buy essential items like groceries or medicine.
You can still keep fit and healthy while at home.
But remember to take care of those who need it.
If you do need to leave home, keep your distance from other people and wash your hands regularly using soap or hand sanitizer.
Let's keep each other safe.
If you feel sick, go to your clinic, doctor or hospital. Or phone the NICD hotline on 0800 029 999.
We can beat this.
We can beat this.
Count me in.
Count me in.
Count me in.
This epidemic will pass, but it is up to us to determine how long it will last.
For the longest of time, Africa seemed immune to the coronavirus, but now reality is hitting home.
This pandemic has the potential to destroy all this and send us right back where we started decades ago.
Within this week, we plan to go around different areas to fumigate. Don't be afraid.
It is vital that we put in place a regional response to the pandemic.
There should be no doubts in our minds that we remain in real danger of devastating upsurges unless we take decisive, collaborative actions together.
Taking a look at how the youth consume news.
I prefer using social networks for information.
I happen to find reading news on my cell phone more convenient than reading news in newspapers.
I do follow various news sites there and I get the links to
to the news articles that I read every single day.
I prefer using the net to watch to get the news because of it's convenient.
Watch Media Monitor Sundays at 9 a.m.
Dumelang, hello, and sanibonani Mzansi to another edition of Dis-Chem's Daily Care, your guide to everything you need to know around COVID-19. Congratulations to you for making it to week 2 of lockdown in South Africa. So what that has meant is that many of us, whether we are with our immediate family, our extended family, or our chosen family, it means we are with each other all the time and sometimes on top of each other. In fact, it doesn't matter what kind of space you're in, it can be a lot. Today I am talking to mother of 2, Nomsa Matita, about how she is coping with her 2 children being on lockdown. Fact or fiction, is it easier being at home with the kids on lockdown?
So, with the current lockdown, I have mastered the art of keeping the kids busy. And as you can see now, I don't even have their attention.
The lockdown and social distancing is happening to children as much as it's happening to us adults, which leads me to my next question. What do you, Nomsa, like doing with your kids during this time?
So during this lockdown, I have decided to stay very positive, and that has given me enough time to spend with the kids. Now, favorite thing to do is makeup, puzzles, so the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, right?
Like Nomsa, you can enjoy yourself during this time. It does not mean you are in prison. And once again, South Africa, thank you for flattening the curve. Remember, we are in this together. We can do this. Well, that's it for me and the people at Dis-Chem's Daily Care. We'll catch you next time. Remember, stay home, stay safe, and take care.
Welcome back. You're still watching Media Monitor. We're starting to wrap things up, and some might say we've saved the best till last because this is a great story. So, 1981, the iconic newspaper, the Sowetan, came into being, and although it was called the Sowetan, actually it was a national newspaper right from the get-go. An important voice in telling the South African story pre and post democracy, and they have now just recently appointed a new editor, and that's Nwabisa Makunga, who was the editor of the Herald and the Weekend Post in the Eastern Cape. We chat to her now about her new job and what it's like to be the editor of such an important newspaper in South Africa. Nwabisa, thanks so much indeed for joining us on the line. Congratulations on your appointment. And it's a huge job, and given the people that have occupied your seat before you, you've got some big shoes to fill.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Peter, and good morning. It is a huge job. It's quite an exciting project for me. As you said, the Sowetan is quite an iconic brand in the media industry in our country. And so it's really quite a phenomenal thing for me to be stepping into the shoes of people who've done a phenomenal job before. And yeah, I look forward to it.
All right, so the previous boss at Arena Holdings Port Elizabeth said that one of the things that you did really well was understand the local nuances of the Port Elizabeth area. And I just wonder, will you be able to bring that magic on a national stage editing the Sowetan?
I hope so, and I actually believe so. I mean, I think South Africa is South Africa. It's quite a dynamic country. There's a lot. I've lived here pretty much all my life, and so I've lived in Johannesburg as well. And so it's I think a job of an editor is really, as you say, understanding who you're speaking to, understanding your audience. And for me, one of the things that are most important is really kind of investing in exactly that, in knowing what people are wanting from a brand and knowing how to get it and knowing how to give it to them. And I think that's really what I hope to bring to the Sowetan.
All right, so you've come in a digital era, and I just wonder, what do you see as the future for the newspaper? Is it going to be still print with online, or are you slowly transitioning to mostly online? And also, I guess, does content change in a digital era?
Most definitely. Look, I think any decision that we make in terms of how we evolve is really informed by consumer insights. So as things are at the moment, for example, like any media organization, I suppose, the Sowetan is mostly consumed online. It's most convenient for people. It's fast. It's happening here and now. And so a lot of investment has gone into that. However, there are people who still want, the look and feel of a print product. And so, we're kind of straddling these two platforms at the moment. And really any kind of involvement that we do beyond that will be informed by what our consumers what our audiences are wanting from us.
And what's going to be your signature to the Sowetan, how it looks, it feels, how people will experience it?
So for me, I think the important thing is engagement. I think for the longest time, media organizations and newspapers particularly were important as that was. We were platforms where, kind of speak to people. And I think for me, what I've come to understand now is the importance of creating a platform where there is mutual engagement. So not only are we speaking at people, speaking to people, but actually we're creating a platform where people can mutually engage with each other through our platforms. And I think for me, that's one of the most important things. I think gone are the days where editors kind of sat in ivory towers and decided what to put out. And I think now is the time where we are basically saying, we're trying to build a country and saying, let's listen to each other and let's create constructive platforms for debate. And so in many forms, not just, on our digital platforms, but sometimes also in human engagement, in some of the things and initiatives that we want to champion as a news brand.
All right, okay. Well, the Sowetan paper that's loved by millions across the country. We wish you the best of luck going forward with the paper. But let's chat a little bit about what else is in the other papers today. And I don't know which story in particular grabbed your attention and which paper.
I think there are two stories. I mean, the one, the Sunday Times, I think did a pretty phenomenal job this morning. The big headline basically saying, save our economy. And it's really the story of our time. All of us are worried about what's going to happen with this economy and what post COVID-19 actually looks like. And we all understand and we all have anxiety about, how to build from the ashes, as it were. And I think that, they've done quite a good job in speaking to different kinds of people and looking exactly at what the plans are that government has in terms of trying to build this economy, and trying to meet the needs of people at this time and post-pandemic.
All right. And then the other paper?
There's quite an interesting story, which I think is becoming now a worrying trend for me. It's in the Sunday Independent about a man in Alex who was beaten up by soldiers. And the allegation is that, he was at his home and seemingly they had found alcohol there. And this man was beaten to death. And so, it's becoming quite a concerning thing. It's not the first case. The Sunday Independent claims that it's now 8 people. We've also reported during the week at the Sowetan about a case where a couple were beaten up by, and they're saying they were inside their yard. So there's a worrying trend about police brutality and law enforcement brutality. And that, for me, it's something that I think, it deserves a look at, particularly from the presidency.
All right. Nwabisa Makunga, thanks so much indeed for joining us, and congratulations and good luck with your new job at the Sowetan.
Thank you very
stay
much.
safe. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Sure.
All right. That's the new editor of the Sowetan, Nwabisa Makunga, speaking to us there. And for you at home, thanks so much indeed for joining us on the show today. Join us again next week. In the meantime, stay at home, stay safe. Bye-bye, everyone.